Welcome back to Professional Perspectives. I'm Marvakella, joined by my co host, Praneeth Vimuri. For many students, scientific research feels intimidating. It can seem like something reserved for graduate students, university professors, or people with extraordinary connections. But today's guest believes that that's simply not true. He believes research success isn't based on luck, it's based on learning a repeatable system.
Joining us today is Ishan Jain, founder and CEO of YRI, a research fellowship helping high school students become published researchers, patent holders, and finalists at some of the world's most prestigious science competitions, including the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair. Before founding YRI, Ishan built an impressive research career of his own, publishing more than 10 peer-reviewed papers while conducting AI research with institutions including Stanford, Cedars-Sinai, Stony Brook University, and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Today, he's dedicated to making those same opportunities more accessible for the next generation.
What really stood out while learning about Ishan's journey is his belief that excellence can be taught. Rather than treating research as something only a few select can achieve, he created a framework that helps students develop the skills, mindset, and strategy needed to provide and produce meaningful scientific work. Ishan, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to Professional Perspectives for episode number 27.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. And yes, I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, that sounds great. And so, to sort of kick off the conversation, growing up, what first sparked your interest in science, technology, and research?
Absolutely. So actually my core interest for research and sort of getting involved in these projects was really sparked in ninth grade. So, when I entered high school, I went to a high school based in the Bay Area, a very competitive environment. A lot of these students, they wanted to, they had a university admissions goal in their mind starting from this ninth grade. I kind of was one of those students as well. So I did see a lot of these upperclassmen, friends that I had, for instance, who were in 12th grade when I was in ninth grade, and they got into these top universities. They were doing a lot of research projects, things like that. So I kind of explored more into sort of how would they get into these top universities. What was their overall portfolio like? And research was a very common theme there. So that's kind of what, to be fully frank, that was what sort of sparked my interest within STEM and engineering. From there, in ninth grade, I started getting involved in these hackathon projects, research, things like that. I just, fell in love with the building process. I used to go to these hackathons every weekend. I would make social impact based projects. So, for instance, one hackathon I'd make something like an AI that can detect or diagnose some sort of medical disease. Another hackathon I'd work on environmental sustainability, things like that. And I noticed there was a lot of overlaps between these hackathon projects and research innovation work as well. And I just saw that talent within myself, and I decided to work with professors, work with other researchers in the area who are more experienced than me, to sort of work on these projects. And over this course of my high school career, I was able to go very in depth within research.
Awesome, that sounds really cool. And so, as you talked about, like many students, of course, especially in the Bay Area, that's where I am too, right? Many people have a goal of publishing research while they're still in high school, as they believe it can be really helpful, and it is for college admissions. So, uh, you yourself became a Regeneron ISEF finalist, right? Where many young researchers dream about. What did that experience teach you, and how do you think you were able to achieve that goal?
Absolutely. So, when I first started my research journey in ninth grade, these projects were, more for the sense of I just wanted to complete a research project, maybe get a publication out of it. I didn't really have any strategy for how to win these science fairs. So I did take part in, a couple of these competitions within ninth grade, 10th grade, but the project that I submitted, that wasn't, truly competitive for science fairs. Those were just good for research publications. And after, losing that first year, that's when I truly realized that winning these major science fairs is a whole different game to just completing a research project and publishing a research paper. So moving into my sophomore and junior year, that's when I kind of revitalized my strategy and started focusing purely on the ISEF and sort of science fair metrics. I studied all these different students who won ISEF, and I sort of looked into what projects they had. What are the judges looking for? So I had a very reverse engineering strategy when I went into these science fairs. And yeah, from there, I worked on two or three research projects in that summer from 10th grade going into 11th grade. All of those 2 to 3 research projects had a very strong focus on social impact. I realized really quickly that winning science fairs is not about scientific novelty necessarily, but it's also, how are you able to connect to the judge and, truly demonstrate that your project has strong social impact. Um, so yeah, in that summer, I worked on 2 to 3 research projects. I submitted the first strongest one to all the science fairs like ISEF, JSHS, and Biogenius. The second one, I kind of packaged that to be more of a business commercial product. I submitted that to Conrad Challenge, Diamond Challenge, all the business and venture competitions. And yeah, actually both, and I had a third project as well, which I submitted to some other types of competitions. But actually, all 3 of those competitions were able to win these awards at these different competitions, and that kind of that sort of gave me the exact blueprint that it wasn't just one project that got lucky and sort of won all these competitions, but I was able to replicate around 2 or 3 different research projects, and they all were able to win some sort of a different competition. So, just from there, I kind of realized, I've mastered the science fair and business competition, winning strategy. That's also what kind of led us to start YRI is like, I sort of understood that this entire competition winning um, scenario is very formulaic. It's very easy to replicate. Um, so yeah, that whole thing kind of taught me that winning ISEF taught me that this entire process of winning these competitions is very formulaic. Most people think it's luck. I personally think it's a very proven strategy that you can sort of do to win.
Yeah, it's really great. And one thing that you did kind of touch on is that you had like kind of a misconception about scientific research. What would you say like the biggest one was? Like apart from how you thought instead of only focusing on scientific research, you gotta focus competition based. What was another sort of misconception you had in this area?
Absolutely. That's a good question. So I would say the other big thing is people think just your project itself is going to help you win these competitions. Most people that work on, very insane like NASA level research that you would think is, this is people will think this is very complicated, very complex, very novel for the research industry, and this person should win the science fair. But, plenty of times I've seen students with very mediocre projects actually win these competitions over the first student that I mentioned. The reason is because the biggest misconception here is that the project is just maybe a small portion of winning these competitions. The major part is how you present your project to these judges. So, sort of, what poster do you create? How are you pitching your project in general to these judges? The reason a lot of these students lose is they focus too much on the methodologies or the boring aspects of the project. They say something like, "Oh, I got 20,000 images. I scraped this. I did that." Those types of things are quite boring to the average judge. Somebody who is able to sort of say to the judge, this is my project, this is the application within society. For instance, if it's a healthcare project, if they say something like, oh, 200K patients were impacted from my research, real world hospitals are using my research. I was able to beat doctors when assessing this disease with a 20x success rate and accuracy rate. Things like that is something that is much more appealing. And I think that's a big misconception that the project itself cannot carry you. It's also how you sell the project.
Yeah, and I feel like that was actually beautifully said in the sense that it's not about how novel your research is, but actually how much you can kind of show as a speaker, like how well your research can do in like a social impact side, kind of like the social
Absolutely.
initiatives that you had when you were younger. Yeah. So for our listeners who don't have an idea of what YRI is, could you kind of describe what it is and what you guys do?
Yes. So, YRI is basically that, it was sort of based on my personal story and also the other researchers that I've kind of was in contact with. So for me, as I said, I started in ninth grade. I failed in ninth and 10th in terms of the research setting. And then I truly clicked in 11th grade. So we want students to, not have that that failure time wasted and just directly get the blueprint and the mentorship that they can have their first research project be very successful for publications, also for science fairs. So for instance, we've had students as young as 7th, 8th, ninth graders who had no prior research experience, no coding background. Through the YRI fellowship, we have a full-time PhD staff, the entire coaching blueprint on how to win these science fairs and conduct top-tier research projects. And these 7th, 8th, ninth graders were able to win science fairs, be published in IEEE, Springer, get major science fair awards, things like that. So YRI in a one sentence or two sentence summary is a end-to-end research program that takes students from having no research experience all the way to working on a cutting edge research project, which ends up being published in a top academic journal, along with winning major science fair awards. And I'd also like to mention that, of course, the outcomes is something students achieve. But our key goal here is we also want students to learn a lot through the process. So we have a very strong coaching team and a PhD team that not only helps them work on these research projects towards these successful outcomes, but also teaches them every single part of the research domain. So students learn a lot as well throughout this process.
That's actually amazing. Yeah, I really like how in depth YRI seems to go with these research projects. I actually am wondering what inspired you to create this foundation and what inspired you to create YRI instead of only continue as a researcher.
Absolutely. So I think, I had over 10 plus research papers while in high school. So I was able to fully exhaust my, overall research career in the sense where, I worked on 3 to 4 different research domains. I published a lot, won all these science fairs. So I thought it was time for me to kind of move to the other side of the table where, just seeing that, so many other high schoolers, especially within the Bay Area and also internationally, um, they're so ambitious. They also want to win, science fair competitions. They also want to get involved in, publishing research papers, all of these different things. So I saw such a really big demand for it. I saw that I'm an expert in this. I've mastered this domain. So why don't we just kind of start a coaching program, a research mentorship program, to help other students as well achieve these same things. And that way, also, my overall goal of creating research projects and winning these competitions, it kind of scales out. So now it's not just about me winning these competitions, but like many other students can also do so. So it's kind of also expanding that whole, passion of mine.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how you're kind of able to apply your niche and where you're really good at something that, for sure, there is a very big demand, especially in the Bay, but also in other hotspots like New York, Texas, and Florida. So yeah, so talking more about your specific research experience, you've conducted research at places like Stanford and NASA funded programs and other institutions. So how did you earn these opportunities at such a young age? And do you have any tips for high schoolers looking to earn these positions?
Yes, so I think the biggest issue now, and also even when I was back in high school, is all these students they're all cold emailing professors. They kind of send a standard template that, hey, I saw your research, I want to work on a project with you. 99% of the time, these professors, they get so many of these emails that they won't actually, bother responding to these high school students. And the 1% chance they do, it's very rare that that project is geared for science fair outcomes. Most of the times, these projects are just lab tools or internal repositories that you can make, the students have kind of work on that aren't really that, significant in terms of also getting a publication opportunity. So, me personally, when I was back in high school, the way I landed these top tier opportunities was ninth grade. I focused a lot on research and hackathon projects. So these hackathon projects really built a very strong GitHub portfolio for me, a very strong resume for me. I was able to win these hackathons. That kind of definitely boosted my resume for a ninth grade student. That opportunity then catapulted me to get into a different research lab at a local university, and I was able to get a publication from that lab. And then I kind of took that publication plus those hackathon project awards, and then I was able to pitch that to like Stanford professors. So if you see here, it's like it's not like me just reaching out to these Stanford professor. It's me kind of building a very strong resume, a very strong personal foundation, and then having these opportunities come to me afterwards. I believe for the NASA one, that person actually reached out to me. They wanted me to work on their research project. So that kind of goes to show that, once you do have strong recognition online, once you're noted online as, this is I'm a researcher of one of these projects, I've published these research papers, and sometimes opportunities come to you as well. So I would say, certainly don't try to cold email like without any kind of ROI. Certainly focus on working on your own resume, and then these opportunities should come your way.
Yeah, and I'm sure like throughout all your success, as you said, you've published over 10 papers. Research often does also have failures and setbacks. How have these actually shaped your growth instead of just only set you back?
Yes. So actually, initially I would just take on any research project. So I would cold email like 1,000 professors. Let's say 10 respond. Whatever project they kind of said, I would just said, I'm ready to do this. And then that actually, two or three of those research projects led to no publications, led to no outcomes. And it was just basically a waste of my ninth grade summer. I believe I only had like one publication out of those research internships I did. So I started, sorry, and what was the question again? Once more?
It was like how setbacks actually helped you grow as a researcher.
Oh yes. So yeah, then basically as a researcher, what I did learn was, truly working on things that I personally want to work on. I mean, if my goal was to win these science fairs and publish these research papers and work on social impact based projects, then it didn't really make sense for me to just take on any random research project just for the sake of it. So I think these setbacks of me having failed projects, things like that, kind of taught me that I should work on projects that I truly am passionate about, not just any project that is available for me to work on. Of course, this comes only. I mean, if you have no other opportunities, then don't follow this advice. But if you already have a decent amount of opportunities and things to do, then you should certainly be very selective of what you work on.
Yeah, I feel like that is actually good advice. Both of your last two answers, I feel like, are very important for high schoolers. And the things I wanted to highlight there were first that if you do put in work, eventually you're gonna have results where people are gonna coming to you, where you don't have to cold email, kind of like your with your NASA research. And I think that really shows a lot to our high schoolers who are doing a lot of cold emailing, often with like no return on investment, like you said, where they send 10,000 emails maybe, but they get like a few no's, a few maybes, but no actual results. And something where even if you do get the opportunity, you can't really publish or get into a competition. So I feel like your advice on kind of working on your own skills is really cool, and I just wanted to highlight that. And also, I wanted to ask that. So, as say you're doing research as a high schooler, you have an idea, you know what you want to do, but you can't really afford any of the programs, or you maybe are like in a situation where all you have is like a computer and Google, and you just have a computer. What would your steps be to getting as close to publishing as possible, or maybe even publishing, where you can't really spend anything with just your time and effort?
I see. So, well, first, I would like to say, YRI, we're very flexible on scholarships as well. We do have a lot of scholarship opportunities. So, if you are a student and you do want to, you don't want to shell out the $3,000 plus program fee we have, certainly do try to apply and do reach out to us for scholarship opportunities. We do accommodate this from time to time. But beyond that, if I was just a student and had no money to spend, I 100% would just hop on on like these AI agents and models. We already have YRI students working on this, and these are. I mean, most of you already know, whoever's listening, that these are phenomenal models. They can basically automate a lot of these coding tasks and things like that. So this is like the best era to really go from having an idea all the way to a finished project with not only much more accuracy that what a human researcher or coder could do, but also with 20 times the speed or even maybe 100 times the speed of completing these research projects. So I would say, use Claude or other AI models to brainstorm your topics, things like that. Just have a conversation with these AI models. Once you do have an idea that it spikes your interest and you think you want to work on it, you can literally flesh out these entire roadmaps with Claude and other AI models. So yeah, I would say the best thing is there's never been an easier time to get into research and just complete projects without any mentorship than now. So yes, you can truly just use AI for your first couple projects. Of course, publishing is a different game plan and ballpark, and that's where we specialize in. But if you just want to finish a research project, you can always do so and have a preprint as well at the end of this, um, just purely through AI.
I actually really like that advice. Yeah, making sure to utilize the current AI and like all the different models that could just help you so much. And I feel like students should really capitalize on these opportunities. One thing I did notice is that YRI, the fellowship, reports publication rate of above 90%. What do your students do that's different from what most students are doing? Because they often have lower percentage rates. So, what is different about your fellowship?
Yeah, so we've actually worked with over 500 plus students over the past year. So now it's like a very strong instinct, like, second nature to us in terms of understanding which exact topics are the ones that do get published in these top journals. We know exactly what are the current trends and what journals are looking for at the current moment. So when we do ideate and brainstorm these topics for our students, we basically already know from day one that this is a topic that will be accepted by these journals. Also, just the way our PhDs help students complete this research projects, we have very strong results, very novel findings in these research projects. And also, this is a third big point, is The way these journals accept papers is they have a committee of members who review researchers' papers, and then based on the majority, they kind of accept these papers or reject them. So a lot of these committee members who do review other researchers' papers, they are actually a part of our full-time team. So during the writing process for when students write these research papers, these committee members are also, people that kind of give their own advice and step in and be very hands-on with writing these research papers. So, these three metrics are how we kind of ensure very high publication rates for students.
Yeah, that's definitely really cool, and I feel like, of course, your knowledge base in the area is something that gives a lot of credibility to YRI and the success system that you guys are building. Uh, so I just wanted to ask, like, in a non like research perspective, right? What separates a good mentor from a great mentor? And if a student's trying to find a mentor for a research opportunity, what should they kind of look for, or what should they kind of target for?
Yes. So, um, everybody's answer here will differentiate, but me personally, what I found is a mentor who is solely dedicated to your research project and is truly, seeing your research project as their own is going to be the most valuable. So at YRI, every single one of our PhD mentors actually works with us full time. It's not like we have contracted a current PhD who is working on their own research work and then they're kind of doing the mentorship on the side. These PhDs that are on our team are full time, so their full goal, their full 24/7 day to day work and mission at the current moment of their life is literally just to mentor students on their research projects. So yes, I would say the biggest thing of what differentiates a great mentor is somebody who does have, the capacity and bandwidth to help you as a student for your research project full time. That's going to be the biggest indicator. I've seen students who work with mentors who have their own research projects going on, and these mentors then, kind of, are very half-hearted with the mentorship they give you. So I would say definitely having a mentor that is full time working for you is the best thing.
Yeah, and also actually kind of bouncing off of that, how does a student actually collaborate with a mentor? How important is curiosity compared to just technical ability when it comes to students and mentor, like their collaboration?
Yeah, I would say certainly. I mean, the mentor will invest how much ever they see the student is investing. If the student is, equally as passionate and they're the ones driving all these curiosity questions and things like that, the mentor will also feel much more passionate with actually, helping you grow as a student and researcher. So I do think, the student should also be very ambitious, very goal oriented. That way they can also bring out the best side of the mentor as well. The mentor will give in their best effort too. So certainly, the mentor will be there for, leading the project and guiding it, but that is heavily fueled by the students' passions and interests as well.
Yeah, and so let's say in this scenario, right, the student is very passionate about it and they're very dedicated, but maybe they're like a sophomore and they have like 2 more years of high school left, but they have a goal of publishing. What's big mistakes that students make that they can avoid when they're like short on time?
I would say is certainly students should be very involved with the project selection phase. So of course, there's going to be in the research journey, there's going to be the project ideation, then actually working on the project, writing the research paper, etc. I would say the first one, which is actually deciding what your topic is going to be, that should be, something the student should be very involved with. If you just choose a topic that you are personally not passionate about, that will not win at a science fair, then the rest of your research mentorship journey is going to be, of no use, right? So I would say certainly the biggest mistake is, don't just overlook the research topic part. Definitely choose the best idea from day one.
Definitely. And one thing that I did notice is that your recommendation letters describe you as both technically gifted, as you were saying, and also an effective leader. How do you balance these two roles of being just like also a worker, but also being able to lead other people?
Yes. So I would say Um, I would say it's not really too much of a balance for me. I think it's just both are just two skill sets that I do possess, and I think having to lead a team definitely requires you to be a domain level expert, right? So since I would say I'm very knowledgeable in the research space, how to produce top tier research projects, how to just kind of get all these things done really fast. I know exactly how to leverage different people in different aspects of the whole business as well. Like if I see a student or an employee actually for us who has, let's say skills in marketing, right? I'll know that, there's no point in deploying this person for the research mentorship operations. Let's have this person focus more on, the marketing. So I'd say like, when you do have domain level expertise, then you also just naturally know, how to succeed in that specific space, and then you're able to lead pretty well as well.
Yeah, and like we did kind of talk about this, right? So there's multiple AI agents, right? Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, ChatGPT, of course. So as AI becomes more capable, how should young researchers use it more responsibly? And also, I feel like there's an assumption where now many researchers believe that AI can write their papers for them. So how can young researchers use it more responsibly, and how can they not like fully and solely rely on AI?
Yes. So could you define what you mean by responsibly?
Responsibly in the sense that where they're not fully relying on AI, where it's just the AI drafting and writing the whole paper for them with little to no student input.
I see. So yes, I would actually take a very unconventional approach here actually with my response. I personally, based on my experience, is AI is going to be much better than any human, especially a high school student. It's going to deliver much higher accuracy. It's much more intelligent. It has access to much more data and data sets. So I do think actually that students should outsource a lot of their work to AI. Um, Not because um, AI can like sort of, but actually yes, because AI can do it better than them. AI is much smarter than them. So I see no reason for why we should not be using AI. I think you're getting much more results, much better accuracy. Everything in general is just going to be higher output compared to a high school student learning it and doing it themselves. Um, but of course, at the end of the day, it's best if the student is also learning a lot. So you can also speak to AI and have it describe and summarize a lot of the work it does for you, and kind of teach it to the student as well. So yes, I have a very unconventional response here, which is I do think that the more AI is being leveraged and used here is actually much better. And I'll actually prefer for an AI to kind of do a lot of these tasks as opposed to just a student.
And just a quick follow up. So I definitely do agree about using AI, and I feel like me too personally, I do use AI in a lot of sense, in a lot of aspects of my life where I can help automate or maybe reduce the amount of work I do. But in the aspect of research, I was just wondering. So if you do use AI, are you gonna rise or like lead into any obstacles or complications either while applying to science fairs or while going into journals?
Yes. So in terms of science fairs, the deliverables and the outputs they're seeking is they want to see the poster that you have created along with the results. So as long as you truly know your project in and out, you should have no issue in terms of submitting to the science fairs and pitching your project. Um, so yes, you should definitely know your project in and out. And for the publications, I would say definitely you should write it yourself. So yeah, so the core foundation here is you can have AI do a lot of the work for you, but you should know your product in and out, and you should also write your own research paper. But maybe in the future, if the ethical guidelines kind of allow AI to also write your research paper, then I'm a big proponent for that as well. It's just if ethically they don't allow you to have an AI write your research paper, then of course you should write your own research paper. But I think at the bare minimum, you should just kind of learn your own research project in and out.
That's actually a very interesting perspective, and I definitely agree with you. Yeah, I feel like it's very important to, again, capitalize on the current transitions that the world is going through. And a sort of different question I have is, what kind of area do you think high schoolers should research now? Like, if they're interested in pursuing some sort of scientific research, what areas should they focus on in the current day and age?
Yes, so I would say certainly move towards social impact applications. Already these big, frontier labs and companies like Anthropic, they're already working on advancing the AI models themselves, engineering within AI. All these top tier semiconductor companies like NVIDIA, Broadcom, they're already making the best infrastructure for these data centers and for these, different chips involved in the AI model procedures and processes. So I would say that, the application layer is something that everybody should focus on. That involves using AI models to create research projects that have very strong applications, whether that's in healthcare, environmental sustainability, making things better, just I think now AI is allowing a much higher volume of projects and things being created, which means that society can be benefited at large, and a lot of new tools can come out that helps other people with their day-to-day lives or things like that. So I would say the application layer is something that a lot of these researchers should focus on, in as opposed to just purely innovating within the engineering field.
Yeah, and also to touch on an earlier point that you have, it was how you started research pretty early in the ninth grade, and you had like the seniors getting into top colleges at your school, and I feel like that's a really big sentiment across multiple high schoolers, where there's this maybe pressure to get into really good schools and perform, and research is often a stepping stone to achieving that goal of getting into a good college. So for students who believe they're not smart enough to pursue research, or who are maybe like suffering from some imposter syndrome, what would you tell them, and what would your advice be for them?
Yes. So, actually, my advice would be like the core message of my advice would be the same before and after the AI era. But now that we are in like very deep in the AI era, what I would 100% say is, I think intelligence is, or like this, domain level expertise is very irrelevant nowadays. If you have no knowledge in, let's say, making an AI model that can diagnose a medical disease, for instance, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, I would say that you'd have to read research papers, you'd have to watch YouTube tutorials, things like that. Now you can just simply have AI do it for you and also teach you at the same time. So I would say that imposter syndrome is, the biggest false mental blockage you can have at this day and age. Quite literally anything can be learned, quite literally anything can be done in a computational setting. So high schoolers who do want to get involved in these research projects, I think no ambition is unachievable. I think if you do want to, win science fairs or work on, very cool projects, I think that is the easiest than it ever has been to ever do that. But even if we were before the AI era, me personally as well, when I was back in high school, like a lot of these projects and, winning science fairs was something that did not seem feasible for me. But if you're truly dedicated to this enough, you will find a way, right? For instance, for me, I used to literally stalk like 20, 30 LinkedIn profiles of people, like, people who won science fairs. I would, just go through their LinkedIn profiles, see what projects they worked on, things like that. So if you are truly very passionate and hungry to actually win these competitions, you will find a way regardless. And the imposter syndrome will just naturally fade away as you do get involved in these different projects. And as you keep working on it, you'll realize, you quickly that the imposter syndrome will just die away, basically.
That's great advice, actually. Yeah, I think that could really tailor to a lot of our high school audiences who are surrounded by such like people who are all inspired to win science fair. So thank you so much for all this advice and kind of wrapping up the episode. For our last question, when people hear the name Ishan Jain years from now, what impact do you hope your work has on students in scientific research in like 5, 10 years time?
Yes, I would say like certainly I'd want to be like an inspirational figure in a sense where, any achievement, whether that's the science fair level or even business growth or even sort of whatever it might be. I think I just want to sort of, put out the inspiration that anything is truly possible. Um, like for me, certainly like one avenue that I have a very strong focus on is research and, winning these awards, but also, lately we've been having a lot of business success, a lot of materialistic success, things like that. So I just want to kind of have a lot of this inspiration in 5 to 10 years that you can kind of embody any image you'd like and quite literally achieve whatever things that are out there.
Ishan, thank you so much for joining us today. One of the biggest lessons from this conversation is that opportunities in research aren't reserved for a select few. They're created through curiosity, persistence, and the willingness to learn. Your work is helping students realize that meaningful scientific contributions can begin much earlier than they might imagine.
What really stood out to me is your belief that success leaves clues. Instead of treating research as something mysterious, you built a framework that gives students a clear path towards becoming confident scientists, innovators, and problem solvers. And that's a really powerful way to create lasting impact.
Thank you again so much for sharing your journey and for everything you're doing through YRI to make research more accessible for students across the world. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on episode number 27 of Professional Perspectives. We hope today's conversation inspires you to stay curious, embrace challenges, and remember that some of the biggest discoveries begin with a single question. Until next time, thank you so much for listening and keep on exploring your professional perspectives.